In regression analysis, an interaction, also known as a moderation effect, occurs when the relationship between one predictor and an outcome depends on the value of another predictor. In other words, the effect of one variable on the outcome is not constant but changes depending on another variable. To model this, we include a product term in the regression equation, typically written as the multiplication of the two predictors. This product term allows the slope associated with one predictor to vary across different levels of the other predictor. To understand this more clearly, it is helpful to first consider a two-predictor regression model without an interaction. Each regression coefficient represents the expected change in the outcome associated with a one-unit increase in that predictor, holding the other predictor constant. Importantly, the interpretation assumes that the effect of each predictor is constant across all values of the other predictor. When we add an interaction term, the interpretation changes substantially. The model now includes x1, x2, and a product term of x1 times x2. In this case, the coefficient for the interaction term represents how much the effect of one predictor changes as the other predictor changes. This means that the slope of one predictor is no longer fixed. Instead, it depends on the value of the other predictor. As a result, the regression coefficient for x1 represents the expected change in y when x1 increases by 1 unit, holding x2 constant at 0. The holding x2 constant at 0 part of the interpretation highlights that the effect of x1 depends on the value of x2. It is important to note that when interpreting an interaction model, we need to choose one predictor to treat as the moderator. The moderator is the variable that determines how the relationship between the other predictor and the outcome changes. Once a moderator is specified, we interpret the coefficients in relation to it. The interaction coefficient tells us how the regression coefficient of the focal predictor changes for every 1 unit increase in the moderator. This is why interaction models are often interpreted by examining conditional effects, such as the effect of a predictor at low, medium, or high levels of the moderator. A common approach for doing this comes from the work of Aiken and West, who proposed the simple slopes analysis method. In this approach, the effect of the focal predictor is evaluated at specific values of the moderator, often at the mean of the moderator and one standard deviation above and below the mean. These conditional slopes, called simple slopes, allow researchers to examine how the relationship between the predictor and the outcome changes across meaningful levels of the moderator. In practice, researchers often visualize these results by plotting 3 regression lines corresponding to low, medium, and high values of the moderator, which helps illustrate how the interaction operates in the data.